Very good. You've nearly got the C shaped correctly.
Thank you, Miss Eleanor.
Now, finish the line with care.
I reckon a person's true worth is found in their actions and character, not in their clothes or reputation.
And so Jack learned that day, true strength isn't found in power, but in the honest choices we make when faced with darkness.
They said the schoolmarm was crazy for offering cash to a poor cowboy. Turns out everyone was wrong. In a quiet frontier town surrounded by dry land, wooden houses, and endless dusty roads, life moved slowly. Everyone knew everyone, and news traveled faster than the wind. People spent their days working hard, talking little, and watching everything that happened around them. It was the kind of place where even a small, unusual event could become a big topic for many days. In this town lived a young schoolmarm named Miss Eleanor. She was different from most people in town. She was educated, calm, and always carried herself with confidence. She taught children how to read, write, and think beyond the limits of the small town. Some people respected her deeply, while others found her behavior strange because she often made decisions that did not match traditional thinking. Miss Eleanor believed in people more than appearances. She often said that a person's worth was not decided by their clothes, job, or reputation, but by their actions and character. However, not everyone understood her way of thinking. One afternoon, something happened that shocked the entire town. A poor cowboy named Jack Dalton had arrived in town a few weeks earlier. No one knew much about him. He was quiet, polite, and kept to himself. He wore old clothes, carried a worn-out hat, and never stayed in one place for long. Most townspeople believed he was just another wandering cowboy looking for temporary work. Jack did small jobs when asked. He helped carry wood, repaired fences, and sometimes assisted farmers with cattle. But he never stayed long enough for anyone to truly know him. Because of this, people assumed he had no real future or importance. Then came the day when Miss Eleanor did something no one expected. She called Jack Dalton in front of several people near the town square. Many people stopped what they were doing, curious about what was going on. It was unusual for the schoolmarm to interact openly with someone like Jack in public. In a calm voice, Miss Eleanor offered him money. It was a decent amount, enough to help him settle, find proper work, or start a small life in town. The offer was clear and direct. She told him that she believed he deserved a chance to build something better for himself. The moment she said this, silence fell over the area. People nearby could not believe what they were hearing. A respected school teacher offering money to a poor cowboy? It did not make sense to them. Some people shook their heads, others whispered to each other. A few even smiled as if they thought it was a joke or a mistake. "Why would she do that?" one man whispered. "She must not know who she is dealing with," another replied. The townsfolk quickly began forming opinions. Many believed Miss Eleanor had made a poor decision. In their eyes, Jack Dalton was just a drifter with no real skills or importance. They thought she was being foolish or too kind for her own good. But Jack did not react the way people expected. He stood quietly, looking at Miss Eleanor with calm eyes. He did not appear surprised or excited. Instead, he seemed thoughtful, as if the offer carried a meaning deeper than money itself. After a long pause, he gently refused the money. His voice was soft but firm. He said he could not accept it. There was no anger in his tone, only quiet respect. This made the situation even more confusing for the people watching. If he truly needed help, why would he refuse such a generous offer? Miss Eleanor did not look disappointed. Instead, she simply nodded, as if she had expected this response. That made the mystery even deeper. After the moment ended, Jack walked away slowly, disappearing down the dusty road. Miss Eleanor returned to the school building without explaining her actions to anyone, but the town did not stop talking. By evening, rumors had spread everywhere. Some said Miss Eleanor had lost her judgment. Others believed Jack had tricked her in some way. A few thought there was a hidden connection between them that no one understood. Yet neither Jack nor Miss Eleanor spoke about what had happened, and that silence only made the mystery grow stronger in the small, dusty town. After the strange offer in the town square, life in the small frontier town slowly returned to normal. But the people could not forget what they had seen. Every shop, Every street corner and every water well became a place where the story of Miss Eleanor and Jack Dalton was discussed again and again. Most people still believed Miss Eleanor had made a mistake. In their eyes, Jack Dalton was nothing more than a quiet, poor cowboy who did small jobs and moved on with no clear purpose. They thought he had nothing special about him. The idea that the schoolmarm had offered him money only made their opinion stronger. But Miss Eleanor did not explain herself. She continued teaching at the small schoolhouse, acting calm as always. Yet something about her behavior suggested she was not surprised by Jack's refusal. It was as if she already knew what would happen. Jack Dalton, on the other hand, continued his simple routine in town. Each morning he was seen walking through the dusty roads with his worn hat and quiet steps. He never stayed in one place for too long. He would help where he was needed without asking for payment. If a fence was broken, he fixed it. If a horse was struggling, he helped calm it. If someone needed help carrying heavy supplies, he stepped in without being asked. Even though he spoke very little, his actions were always careful and skilled. Some people began to notice that Jack did things in a way that showed experience. He was not careless or untrained. Everything he did had purpose and control. Still, the townspeople refused to change their minds. "He is just lucky," some said. "He probably learned a few tricks on the road," others added. But Miss Eleanor seemed to watch him differently. Whenever Jack passed by the schoolhouse or the town center, she would look at him with quiet attention, as if she was trying to understand something others could not see. One afternoon, something small but important happened. A farmer's wagon broke down near the edge of town. The wheel had come loose, and the horses were restless. Several men tried to fix it, but none of them were successful. The farmer was worried because he needed to deliver supplies before nightfall. Jack Dalton happened to pass by. Without saying much, he walked over and studied the wagon. He checked the wheel carefully, looked at the axle, and examined the tools the farmer had. Then, in a calm and steady manner, he began working. Within a short time, Jack fixed the wagon. Not only did he repair it, but he also made adjustments that made it stronger than before. The farmer was surprised and thankful. The men who had tried earlier stood quietly, unable to explain how Jack had done it so quickly and easily. Miss Eleanor, who had been nearby, observed everything. She did not speak, but there was a small change in her expression. It was not surprise. It was recognition. Slowly, small moments like this began to happen more often. Jack helped repair a damaged barn roof after a storm. He guided a lost horse back to its stable without difficulty. He even helped settle a disagreement between two ranch workers by calmly speaking to them and finding a fair solution. Each time, the townspeople grew more confused. If Jack Dalton was just a poor cowboy, how could he do all these things so well? Why did he seem so calm under pressure? Why did he never brag or ask for attention? The questions spread through the town, but answers were still missing. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, two men were sitting outside the general store talking about Jack. "He works like someone who has done important work before," one said. "But why would someone like that end up here?" the other replied. No one had a clear answer. Meanwhile, Miss Eleanor continued to remain silent about her offer. But inside, she seemed to understand something that the rest of the town did not. Jack Dalton was not an ordinary cowboy. And slowly, without revealing anything about himself, he was beginning to change the way the town looked at him. But the biggest truth about him was still hidden. As days passed in the small frontier town, something quiet but important began to change. At first, it was small things that most people ignored. But slowly, those small things started to connect together like pieces of a puzzle. And without even realizing it, the townspeople began to question what they thought they already knew. Jack Dalton was still the same in appearance. He still wore his worn-out hat. He still walked slowly through the dusty roads. He still spoke very little. But now, more people were watching him closely. Not with complete trust, but with growing curiosity. The same man they once called just a poor cowboy was now becoming someone they could not easily explain. One morning, a strong wind passed through the town. It damaged a few wooden structures, knocked down loose signs, and made life harder for the people working outside. In most cases, repairs would take a long time. But Jack Dalton moved through the town quietly, helping where he could. He fixed broken fence posts without being asked. He secured loose boards on rooftops so they would not fall. He helped an old shopkeeper lift heavy materials back into place. Everything he did was calm and steady, as if he already knew exactly what needed to be done. People started noticing something important. Jack never wasted time, he never made mistakes, and he never asked for anything in return. Even the people who once doubted him began to feel unsure. "He works like someone trained," one man admitted quietly while watching Jack repair a gate. "But trained in what?" another asked. "We don't even know where he came from." That question had no answer yet. Miss Eleanor continued teaching at the schoolhouse, but she also watched everything closely. She did not interfere. She did not explain. But whenever Jack helped someone, she would pause for a moment, as if remembering something from the past. The connection between them was still a mystery to everyone. One afternoon, something happened that made the town even more curious. A young horse that belonged to the town's blacksmith had become restless. It refused to calm down, and no one could get near it safely. Several experienced men tried to handle it, but the horse remained nervous and unsteady. Jack Dalton arrived quietly, as he often did. Instead of rushing, he stood at a distance and observed the horse carefully. He did not speak loudly or make sudden movements. Slowly, he walked closer and began speaking in a calm, soft voice. His tone was steady, almost like he was communicating rather than commanding. After a few moments, the horse began to relax. Step by step, Jack moved closer until he could gently guide it. Within a short time, the horse was calm and listening to him. The blacksmith stood in silence, surprised at what he had just seen. "How did he do that?" someone whispered. But again, no one had an answer. That evening, the town became more divided in opinion. Some people still believed Jack was just lucky or naturally good with animals. Others began to think he had real experience far beyond what he showed. But the most important change was this: people were no longer sure of their old judgments. Even those who once laughed at Miss Eleanor's offer now stayed quiet when Jack passed by. They began to notice something deeper about him. He never tried to impress anyone. He never showed pride. And yet, everything he did carried quiet confidence. Meanwhile, Miss Eleanor remained calm, but her eyes often followed Jack from a distance. It was clear she was not surprised by what was happening. Instead, she seemed to understand something that no one else had figured out yet. One evening, as the sun began to set, Jack was sitting alone near the edge of town. The sky was turning orange and the wind was soft. A few townspeople watched him from far away, still unsure what to think. "He doesn't act like a man without purpose," one woman said quietly. "No," another replied. "He acts like someone who had a purpose and left it behind." That thought stayed in the air. For the first time, the town was not laughing at Jack Dalton. They were thinking about him. And slowly, the old belief that he was just a poor cowboy was starting to break apart. But the real truth about Jack Dalton, and why Miss Eleanor had offered him money, was still hidden just beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. The small frontier town had been filled with questions for many days. People talked about Jack Dalton everywhere they went. Some still believed he was just a quiet cowboy with a few useful skills. Others were no longer so sure. The way he helped the town, the way he solved problems, and the way he carried himself made people think there was something more to him. But no one had real answers. Not yet. Miss Eleanor, the schoolmarm, had also become part of the mystery. She never spoke about her offer again. She never explained why she had tried to give money to Jack in front of everyone. She simply continued her work at the school, teaching children with the same calm and patient voice as before. But deep inside, she seemed to be waiting for the right moment. And that moment finally came. One morning, a traveling merchant arrived in town. He was passing through and stopped at the general store. While talking with a few locals, he heard the name Jack Dalton. At first, he did not react, but when he heard more details about the quiet cowboy helping the town, his expression slowly changed. "You say his name is Jack Dalton?" the merchant asked carefully. The townspeople nodded. The merchant stayed silent for a moment, as if remembering something from the past. Then he spoke again, slowly and seriously. "I think you people don't know who he really is." Those words immediately caught everyone's attention. He explained that years ago, Jack Dalton had worked as a foreman on a large railroad project. It was not an easy job. It required skill, leadership, and responsibility. Jack had been respected there for his strong work and fair decisions. Many workers looked up to him because he never treated anyone unfairly and always solved problems calmly. But something had happened. The merchant continued carefully. There had been issues in the project involving unfair practices and pressure to ignore safety rules. Jack refused to be part of anything that could harm workers or break trust. Because of this, he left the position. He chose honesty over power, even if it meant losing a successful future. After that, he disappeared from public work. He became a traveling cowboy, working quietly from place to place. The townspeople stood in silence after hearing this. Suddenly, everything started to make sense. Jack was not a man without purpose. He was not a failure. He was someone who had already built a strong reputation and then walked away from it because he believed in doing what was right. That evening, Miss Eleanor finally decided to speak. She asked Jack to meet her near the schoolhouse. The sun was setting, and the sky was calm. When Jack arrived, he did not seem surprised. It was as if he already knew this moment would come. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Miss Eleanor finally said softly, "They know now." Jack nodded. She explained that she had recognized him the moment he arrived in town. Years ago, she had learned about his work and his decision to leave the railroad project. She had always respected what he did, even though he had disappeared from that life. When she saw him struggling in the town, she had offered him money, not as charity, but as a way to help him restart his life with dignity, without judgment from others. She knew he would refuse it, but she still tried, hoping it might open a different path for him. Jack listened quietly. Then he finally spoke. He said he never wanted attention or praise. He only wanted a simple life where he could work honestly. He did not regret leaving his past behind, but he also did not expect anyone to remember him. Miss Eleanor looked at him and said, "You were never forgotten, just misunderstood." The next morning, everything in the town felt different. People who once doubted Jack now looked at him with respect, not because of rumors, but because they finally understood his truth. He was not a lazy cowboy. He was a man who had already proven his worth and chosen a humble life instead of pride. Jack did not become a hero in a loud way. He did not ask for recognition. He simply continued helping the town the same way he always had. But now, people saw him differently. Miss Eleanor's actions also made sense to them now. What once looked strange or foolish was actually based on knowledge and respect. The town had been wrong, but now it had learned the truth. As days passed, Jack Dalton slowly became part of the town, not as a mystery anymore, but as a respected man who chose honesty over fame. And Miss Eleanor, who once stood alone in her belief, was no longer questioned. In the end, the town realized something important. Sometimes the quietest people carry the strongest stories, and the most misunderstood actions often hide the deepest truth.